Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Kingdom Hearts 2 Critical Difficulty video walkthrough. We are about to assault the Dreadnought, and we're moving into our final visit in Twilight Town. We're currently using a very interesting looking craft to get through this section. This is probably one of the hardest gummy missions in the game. This is one of those where if you do turn your brain off and you don't play the game, you can probably die, and you can't really say the same for many of the gummy missions. The good news is, I find this one to be very fun, and I think the music on this sequence is incredibly good, especially in the new soundtrack with the revised music. It's got some serious quality going for it. But we've done a few of these at this point, and this is the last one, so if you're in the camp of people who don't like the gummy missions, you don't have to see too many more of them. If you're in the other camp of the folks going for the trophy, probably going to see quite a lot of them, because that's going to be a little tricky unless you're very good at the gummy stuff and you understand how they work. But I'm not really going to talk too much about that, because it's been a very long time since I personally did what that trophy requires, and this is not a trophy guide, this is a video walkthrough, just to get through the game on Critical. So we'll stick to what we know, and we'll throw in some random tangents, because I've been getting some pretty damn interesting comments recently. Some of them just baffle my mind completely. Like, nationalism. It's this strange thing that seems to be a holdover from tribalism that we just can't seem to get rid of. And I'm the exact same as a lot of people, you know. I take pride in where I come from, but I couldn't tell you why. It is a patch of dirt, a piece of geometry that I just so happen to be queefed out on. You know, I didn't choose it. I had no influence in it, yet I somehow take pride in it. I like being English, you know. There's a great history to, you know, Britannia and Britain and being, you know, from that wealth of just insane conquest, but creative innovation and everything in between. But at the same time, I didn't do any of that. I just kind of think it's cool to be part of it, you know, as it grows and it expands in this amoeba's form that we do now call history. But even so, like, all considered, I don't get nationalism, I really don't, and I don't get it on almost a pathological level, because essentially the Earth doesn't care. You know, we create these concepts, these illusions of things that we put extreme amounts of value into, and it's kind of the human condition, the struggle of life, and I find it just baffling when certain things turn up. And one of the things, especially when it comes to the topic of nationalism, that is almost suffocating is it's got to be Americans. And a lot of people will probably think I should watch my words here, because like a large percentage of my subscribers are American, but I like to think the people who are subscribed, who like my videos, are the Americans that kind of question the bullshit in their society, that question, you know, parts of their country that is fucked up, because no place is perfect, you know, all places have got issues, and I think America more so because it's so damn big. Like, if I could peak, it'd probably be a mountain. Now, if I could speak Chinese, or well, technically it's Mandarin, isn't it? Mandarin or Cantonese, depending on the area. Or several different variants of those languages, because it's like when people say, "Oh, can you speak African?" It's like, what part of the 3,000 different fucking languages is that? But well, China is a big place, and it's probably got a shit ton of problems. But at this moment in time, America leads the, I say, civilized world, even though China's got that industrial complex moving. But it's nationalism on a strange scale, on a scale that's indoctrinated into children. Like, I know you like your flags, and you like your amendments, and, you know, you like your constitution and your Bill of Rights and all that great stuff that founded your country, but do you have to force it down your kid's face? I don't really get that. Like, I come from a country that has laws too, but I've never once had to recite any of them. And I'm not a criminal either. I've not turned into some kind of scumbaggery of society, some rogue or villain. I'm just, you know, a dude who's interested by weird shit and talks about stupid stuff on gaming videos. Like, I was watching this. It wasn't even a documentary. It was some kind of news piece the other day, and it was just seeing people like doing salutes towards flags and reciting almost practiced just insanity to me. But it's just that daily repetition, isn't it, of wherever these people have been brought up, because I hate it when people blame the kids, you know. Kids are to blame 99% of the time, folks. Whenever I was bad as a child, it was definitely me. But you know, when it comes to younger children, and it comes to certain things, like, especially when it comes to thinking, you can't blame the kids, because it's the parents that are pushing them this way, you know. It's the rules, it's the guidelines, it's the people that build up the ways things work so that they can do things like making people quote stuff. And it's like prayer. I went to a Catholic school, and before we ate, and at the beginning of the day, we said a prayer. And it was the most trite, nonsensical thing you could ever say on anything, and it did nothing. It did absolutely fucking nothing. There was no benediction. There was no oblation to something. It was just empty words before we ate. It was literally, everybody got to giggle, put their hands together, say these silly words that we'd all created, you know, strange, like, different versions of, like children do, and then we ate. Because it had no significance to some of us. To all of us. Fuck that. You know? There's no such thing as a religious child. There isn't. Unless you're Jesus, maybe. I think Jesus might be a religious child. But it's the same with nationalism, like... Have you bled for your country? Have you fought for your country? Have you been knee-deep in fucking human waste and dead bodies for your country? Then why are we so nationalistic about it? It's a very strange impulse that we've tailored. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to say both. But whenever I talk about something like this, I generally get, you know, some kind of apologetic coming in the way of defending some part of it. Like in my Spec Ops: The Line Foobar difficulty walkthrough, I was talking about some pretty dark stuff about the Second Amendment, which I think the Second Amendment needs to go. I think it's an archaic piece of ruling which doesn't help anybody. You know, I come from a country where the only way you can see a gun is if you go to an airport, are somehow in contact with special police, or a military force. Police don't have them. They have whistles and bikes and they sing songs and people don't get shot. It's this magical result where if you don't give idiots guns, they don't shoot people. I mean, they still kind of fucking do, but it's a lot rarer. And I think that's a good thing, because I don't walk out of my house with fear I'm going to be shot. Like, I'd like to see a gun, I'd like to use a gun. Hell, the closest I can get to anything that's gun-related is painted completely ridiculous colours, just so that no one tries to rob a bank with it. And because of this, you know, knives are probably a bigger threat in this country when it comes to any kind of crime or violence. And I've never seen anybody with a knife outside of a pen knife, because they're so fucking hard to get now, because you can't even buy toy guns for kids. Like, it's this strange thing where this fascination with guns and this just insane notion of needing the right to bear arms against what? Rampaging fucking Cherokee tribes that are coming to try and scalp you and rape your family. I don't think so, dudes. They're all in fucking casinos now. Like, it's not how it works anymore. And I think people who think that rule is just as valid now as it's ever been is someone who has a fundamental lacking understanding of history, and also is probably very close-minded and in a place where close-mindedness is perfectly fine, because that's kind of what it is, you know. The rest of the world is laughing at you because it's a kind of crazy notion, but whenever you say something like this, or you make this kind of tangent, or you talk like this, people get very defensive, and it's understandable, because if I'd have been brought up in a gun culture, I'd fucking love me a gun. I'd love me lots of guns, but I still like to think there'd be a part of me that realised if we didn't have such easy access to them, maybe cinemas and schools and shopping markets weren't getting shot up so fucking much, you know? Maybe people weren't so keen to be killed, and I know police and special police and military aren't always nice people, and they can do bad things with guns as well, but a lot of the time, unless it's very rare, like that most recent incident that happened in America, where that town was kind of trying to protect their own asses, those police had got it into like a fucking policed state, where journalists were being attacked and just all kinds of nasty stuff because some dude was like fucking bare-macing protesters or whatever. I don't pay attention to a lot of news, guys, and I know that might sound profoundly ignorant, but I do it because I'd probably kill myself, because all it is death, gloom, pestilence, famine, disease, war, death, gloom, and it just repeats. That's all it is. There's no people curing things, there's no people inventing things, there's no people aspiring to things, there's no love, there's no cherish, there's nothing, it's just fucking death. And there's already that notion that we're all going to die floating around in our heads, and we're all, you know, kind of convincing ourselves that we'll live forever while we try and make something worthwhile of it. But it's just, if you're going to give somebody guns, I would rather it be the people who might actually need them, rather than the people that might actually use them. And I know to some people that's the same thing, and I know there's a lot of people that don't have much faith in police, but I like to think that even the worst cop goes into trying to be a police officer with good intentions, and maybe it's just the stress of the job or the situation or a bunch of other variables. You know, maybe he was a sadist or a sociopath and he just managed to pass the test, and if he wasn't, you know, being a dick with a badge, he'd be murdering people. And, you know, maybe it's the better alternative to it. I don't even know. It's just a weird tangent that came from somebody telling me that they would rather have a country full of people wielding guns than the government. And to me that sounds like the Wild West, and there's a very good reason why nothing else is like the Wild West anymore. Because it kinda didn't work. That's why it was leaked out, and, you know, a little bit more of a civilized time turned up, because I like to think we're more of a more civilized time where somebody can voice these ideas. Because if you bear in mind, in a lot of places, you still can't voice certain ideas, and certain things are very taboo, and if you do say them, you know, you can get threats of harm and violence. And a great example of this would be, you know, religion. I say some things that would make my grandma gasp with a deep intake of breath. And in some places, I would be killed. Which, bit of a contrast, isn't it? Offending a relative, being stoned to death, because that is the law. But the world is a very strange place, and you have to carve out your own little niche of it, and find your own little enjoyment from it. And this topic is dominating this video, because as you can see, we're doing nothing really new in this particular one. We're just retreading some steps through Twilight Town, killing a little bit stronger enemies this time. They've got a little bit more life than they did the first time we bumped into them. That could be a complete fallacy, but it looks like they're a little tougher. They seem to be taking the hits. And we're making our way back to the old mansion, where King Mickey's going to help us out now, and we're going to be moving into the final tier of the game as we get to one of the coolest named worlds in the game. But I'm just curious, as a show of hands, because the Kingdom Hearts 2 video is got like a bit of a dedicated following to it at this moment. You know, it's averaging anywhere between like 300 to 1,000 views, depending on what section it is. And I'm seeing the same names pop up in the comments, and they're the names that I like to see pop up. So I'm curious just of your opinions, if you are from America, what you think about just the way that gun culture is shaping your country. And I know that this is kind of a null point, because in America, talking about religion, talking about Second Amendment in politics is the same as just, you know, setting up the hangman's noose. They are topics that literally will... Wow, look at that. I was not very good at that. Yeah, I'm at that point in the game where I didn't even know what that minigame was. I've soon come to appreciate it a little bit more, but just then, it took off half my life. That could have been a kill shot if I wasn't careful. But I'm just curious as to what you think. Like, are you somebody who has a gun in your purse? Are you a man who has a purse? That might be a more interesting question. You know, I don't know why I said purse. My female viewers is a very small percentage. You know, do you have it on the seat of your car or something? You know, do you have it loaded? Fucking hell. It's it's an interesting thing. Or are you the person who's the complete opposite, you know? Because I find it a very interesting thing, and a lot of the people who comment on my channel, there are two kinds of people that comment on my channel. Well, I say that's completely wrong. Two kinds of predominant things that appear from people who comment on my channel. There are the people who have been with me for a while, and there are the people who have not. That is kind of it. There are the new folks who are either saying something nice, questioning something interesting, or leaving some hate. And then there are the vets, the people whose names or pictures I remember and I can spot from a mile off, and you know, they're the ones who I listen to, because there's this amazing thing on YouTube where if you don't interact with the channel doesn't really know who the fuck you are. So when you say something, it's like white noise. And I know that might sound kind of callous, but sometimes it's needed, because every so often you'll get a comment that if you're taking everything to heart, it'll just blow you up for no real reason, and you've always got to keep that kind of realization in your head that it is a game. You know, YouTube is a game. Some of the stuff that people say is just completely venomous, poisonous, and unnecessary. And however, it can be incredibly funny to berate them and to fire back. I'm moving towards a stage in the channel where I don't do that, and it's quite tricky for somebody like me who's had a very confrontational life. But I'm looking around the mansion at this moment, because it is a little bit maze-like. That right there is incredibly dangerous. If I'd have got the sweet spot between those dragoons, I would have died, because I would have taken 2 hits at the same time. Not a very fun situation, but a dangerous one to say the least. But just interesting. Nationalism, very interesting concept. Dying for dirt that doesn't care. But the ideal is probably the reason that the people do it. The ideal makes a lot more sense. But once again, what is an ideal when we strip it down? It's nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's a chimera. Which I find really interesting. I was reading a Clive Barker story the other day, and he used chimera to describe something. And I was kind of like, that's pretty cool. I've never thought to use that word that way. And then when I held the button of it on my Kindle, of course it came up with the Greek mythology, which, if you're Googling chimera and it's not talking about Greek, then there's something wrong with what you're Googling, because that's kind of the origin of it. But then below it, it used it in a context of describing something that was impossible to achieve and illusory, because of course, chimeras, well, I like to think they didn't exist. I like to think they're a fabrication, but that brings you to a whole different topic, doesn't it? Where, isn't it funny how we can take the piss out of Zeus and people like chimeras and Thor and Apollo and whoever you want to mention, yet you say anything remotely against that Jesus guy, my God, you better know your shit. When you think about it, they are equally as credible. I don't know which one I'd believe in if I chose to. It would not be the fucking white dude in Jerusalem, because I've got an understanding of how the sun works, and it fucking don't work like that. If he were an albino, he'd be burnt to tits. But this is an interesting fight now. You're going to be backed up by Axel. Axel's one of my favourite characters in this game, because I think he looks cool. I like his weapons. I like his general attitude. I just think a lot of his lines are a little bit confused. And if you don't know what I mean, there's some pretty funny stuff on the internet about Axel being gay, and it's got a lot of weight to it when you think about it, because he's always talking about his best friend, he's always wanting to share ice cream with him, and he's always like really sad, which is pretty much what a relationship is, which is absolutely nothing like a relationship, but you know what I mean. But this fight here is notorious with speedruns, because Axel's AI makes the fight a lot more difficult to do efficiently. I don't really think you're going to notice it too much on your playthrough, especially if you're just going through at your own leisure like I am. Using the Decisive Pumpkin, which a subscriber was kind enough to remind me the name of. And they also told me that Moses is called the MCP, the Master Computer something, which, all very, very true, and stuff that I did know at one point in time, but I'm going to stick with Moses because I think it's funnier. And at this point, there's quite a lot of content for Kingdom Hearts out there on YouTube, so if people are stuck on that boss, I'm sure they'll be able to find something. But after this fight, it's going to be the end of the video, and then we're going to be moving into end game. So exciting stuff, guys. Thank you very much for watching. You take care now.